This is Green Tagged Theme Park in 30, where we offer an insider's take on the top theme park news from each week. I'm Philip, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. This week, we're going to discuss the good-to-go days at Walt Disney World, Legoland Shanghai, and a special, close to my heart segment that I'm choosing to call Liquid Gold. Hopefully we'll get there. So, I know. Okay, all right, let's get started.
Like the fact that you're choosing to call it liquid gold.
All right. So first up, the first set of good-to-go days at Walt Disney World in Florida have been unveiled. They were unveiled last week, but we didn't wait to talk. We kind of waited to talk about them until this week. They released their initial set of good-to-go days for annual pass holders as part of the ongoing modifications to its theme park reservation policy. The first round of reservations include January, several dates in January, some of which have already passed. So basically how it works now is that annual pass holders can go to the calendar and they can look at like what days are good to go days, and it kind of shows up in their reservation system so they can see those. So it's not every day, I'd say it's like 2 to 3 days per week right now. And so I think we've been waiting for this for a while. It does make things maybe for now it makes them a little bit more complicated because you're still looking at your reservation thing and you're trying to figure out which days are good to go. And then if it's like a flow chart. It's like, okay, where's the day I want to go? Is it good to go or not? If it's good to go, I don't need a reservation. If it's not good to go, I can go after 2 p.m.
Can I get a reservation?
Yeah. Well, no, it's like, so actually you can still go after 2 p.m. unless it's, a weekend or whatever. And so then it's very flow charty still right now, but I think it is progress, but I think most of all, it represents a manifestation of what we talked about in several shows ago, which is that Disney World is still struggling for attendance. And, it kind of last time they blamed the heat, which is interesting because if the heat continues this year, which it has signs already of El Nino that it will continue this year. I wonder if it's going to be even worse this year for theme parks. But I think part of it's a sign that, their attendance is still struggling. They haven't really seen a rebound from that. I also think it is interesting because a lot of the I don't want to say like people that don't work in the industry, they see this as a sign that Disneyland might remove reservations. And I don't think there's any reason to believe that at all. I don't think California will ever get rid of their reservations because why? Because they opened up annual pass holder sales for again, and they sold out again in a minute. And I mean, until the demand gets lower than what it is now, they have no reason to get rid of the reservations in California. It's clearly not deterring Californians. So clearly it's different in Orlando where the reservations are, they feel that the reservations are some sort of deterrent or something because they're rolling this back, and even though it's making it more and more complicated. Thoughts?
It's like putting a combination lock on having fun. I mean, it is
really, truly.
It's absolutely ridiculous. I've hated it from day one. I don't like it in California. I don't like it in Florida. But the first thing we have to take into consideration because you brought California into the discussion, first thing we have to, I think, take into consideration is the California parks and the Florida parks are very, very different. Mm-hmm. They're different because, well, first of all, they're different in size. And by that, I don't mean numbers of attractions. I mean literal size. Yep. You can fit more people in Magic Kingdom in Florida than you can in Magic Kingdom in California, or in Disneyland in California. So there's that. So the reservations in California make more sense, really, because you have a smaller footprint. Your queues were never, ever designed. They've tried everything they can to retrofit those queues. They've tried, the whole Magic Genie Pass, Twinkle, Stardust, whatever the hell you call it now. They've tried many different ways to make it something that they can Disneyfy. And they have trained Californians, again, more of a local park than a tourist attraction park. Or certainly more of a local park than Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando. I think that what this suggests to me is that I'm not the only curmudgeonly old stinker who's sitting there going, I won't go until they get rid of their reservations because I just think it's stupid. Mm-hmm. It makes it very difficult, as you've said, going through the flow chart, going through the combination lock of figuring out how to go and have fun. Mm-hmm. It's the happiest place on earth. as soon as you figure out how the heck to get there. And then once you do, you have to figure out your exact day, plan it out, where you want to eat, when you want to eat, what rides you want to go on, what attractions you want to do, plan it all out. So there's no spontaneity, there's no fun. It's like being at work. So I think that this is at least, knowing the way Disney has done things, they will test things, they will let them fail, and then learn from that failure. To me, this is a test of the thing I don't quite understand is we talk about attendance being so down in Walt Disney World Resort, and yet reservations are still a thing.
Yeah.
You get reservations when you have to control the flow in.
Yeah.
Not to encourage people to come in. So, that may have helped during the coming out of the lockdown time. That may have encouraged people to want to go. But nobody's locked down and everybody can go pretty much anywhere they want.
Yep.
And, in Florida, they are and correct me if I'm wrong, Philip, but they are the only park that has a reservation system, correct?
Correct, yeah. So that's actually what I was going to ask you, Scott, is I don't... I just feel really dumb. First, I don't understand. Like, there has to be a reason why they haven't gotten rid of it because, it just it feels dumb. Like, I agree with you that it makes sense in California. Just, it's a locals park. It's, there's so much more demand. It's so difficult because all the locals, like, it does make sense in California. I do believe because, there's so many, like, people would just otherwise, it's just like people used to do. They just show up, after work or, it's much more of a locals park. So I think it's a problem there. But I really can't figure out, like, why is Walt Disney World keeping these? I mean, clearly it isn't needed because, Universal, nobody else has it. It's not even like in the world. This is not a thing anywhere else, like at any other theme park. And I don't understand. I just feel so dumb. So I can't figure it out.
I may be completely off on this. But based on how I've seen other large theme park corporations work, it's because the decisions are being made in California. The decisions for the entire corporation are not being made in Florida. They're being made in California. So, and because it works in California, and because Californians have adapted it and adopted it, then they don't see, it's like, well, if it can work in California, it can work in Orlando. Not true.
Yeah, not true.
I think this is something, and I'm going to go on a much grander scale here, but I think this is something that all theme parks should take into consideration, especially large corporations that have parks in multiple locations. Not everything works in every location, especially if you're going overseas. There are cultural issues and cultural differences and cultural changes that you must take into account. And I think that in this particular case, I won't go completely off down a rabbit hole on this one, but I think in this particular case, you have to recognize that you're comparing apples to oranges here. You're comparing, Mickey to Daffy here because the one park operates very, very differently from the other. And, when people have planned out their vacations to go to Walt Disney World Resort for a week or 2 weeks, and they can't get a reservation, or they think they can't get a reservation, they change their plans. They go stay at Universal.
Yeah.
They go somewhere else. So, whether it is people really can't get reservations or there is that perception that you may not be able to get a reservation, it is still putting up another roadblock to getting into the park. Yeah. Now, this is a pendulum swing, a huge pendulum swing from, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they were trying desperately everywhere you'd go to try to make it as easy and seamless as possible from the outside world to the inside world. They were trying to remove all roadblocks, all challenges, all discomforts to get into a park. Ideally, I sat in a meeting many years ago where they said, in a perfect world, and this is before the technology was there to actually do this, in a perfect world, we would have no turnstiles, no tickets, and no gates. It would all be based on facial recognition, and people would simply walk in. And it would make it simple, it would make it easy, it would be welcoming. So I think that this is a unique situation, and I can't promise you that it's because decisions are being made in California, but it's kind of what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. Well, this is fascinating. I think we could rant about this for a while, and I'm sure we will get to do so again because it's going to change again.
Oh, when they announce their next good to go days, they'll go to good to go weeks next, and then they'll go to only Monday through Friday good to go, and
hopefully
not including holidays. It's anytime you make it difficult for guests to do something in your park, whether that's get into the park, get food, see a show, whatever. We've talked about it over and over again. It's all about the creature comforts. Make it easy, make it comfortable.
Yep. Okay, next up, Legoland Shanghai has an opening season, ? It's just so funny. I'm sorry. I'm sure some of our listeners get exasperated with me about my whole like China thing, but it's just it's so funny because they're like releasing this as if there's Merlin Entertainment's announced that the new Legoland Shanghai Resort will debut in China, but then they're like in spring or summer of 2025. It's just so it's so Chinese where they're like, we're doing it. The opening date is here, and we're like, when is the opening date? It is a 6-month period, and we're like, when are we going to know when it is? And they're like, when it is, like you'll know when it's open, and we're like, okay, welcome to China. So anyway, the 1.4 US billion resort will include a hotel and a theme park divided into 8 themed lands, such as Monkey Kid, Ninjago, and Lego City. So basically, we're really just getting a time period announcement here because we've known about this park development for quite a while, and I just wanted to underscore that this, in my opinion, is a little bit of I don't want to say red herring, but it's kind of like this doesn't mean that the theme park industry in China has recovered. Basically, it is, I think, my point, the thrust of my point here, and it's just because things are still difficult. The economy is still struggling to recover in China, and working with a company that works with China, I deal with this directly, and I think really it's because the money. It's like if this was already set and planned to go, right? The money was allocated, like everything was allocated and ready to go. So I think that's really why it has this date period. I don't think it's because people believe that there's going to be a increase in demand by that time, because everything I'm hearing, at least, is like it's a 3-year thing. Like we're not looking at recovering that area till 26, 27, not like 25. So that I don't know, those are my thoughts.
Well, I think that theme parks in general have learned, and this goes back well pre-COVID, have learned when they're ever either opening a new park or adding a large attraction, making a large expansion, there are always going to be things that are out of their control.
Yeah.
So it is not uncommon. It doesn't seem this one is a little weird because it's like if they had said opening 2025, I would have been fine with that. If they had said opening spring of 2025, I would have been fine with that. But the fact they're going spring or summer of 2025, that's sort of like, we don't really know. But it's not uncommon, theme parks, excuse me, even in the US to say, opening, it's that wonderful phrase, coming soon. Mm-hmm. What does soon mean? Mm-hmm. Are we talking about soon as in 15 minutes or soon as in 20 years because, the glaciers have moved in that time? Mm-hmm. You have to kind of look at it as it gives them a little bit of insurance coverage. But to your point, I think it's very interesting that, especially in China, do you think, or are you suggesting that if the demand is not back, they'll drag their feet and do fall of 2025
yes.
or winter of 2025?
Oh, yes. Oh, and that's so... Oh, God, again, I'm trying not to be triggering to people, but in my experience, at Gantum, working with people, that would kind of fit the cultural... I don't know.
We're not going to open until we need to.
Yeah, so basically it's...
we're not going to open until...
Right,
okay.
There's like this a little bit of like they always build in like leeway contingency, like, boxing them into definitive dates, which is what we like to do in the West. We like to have dates and have everything kind of set out. That's not as much of a thing. And I think I've had it explained to me a lot of different ways, but I think the best way I understand it is that because they all know that essentially the rule of law and the government is out of their control, that it's a defense mechanism to an extent, where it's like, we don't want to make a concrete promise you can hold us to, because things out of our control could change that we literally cannot do anything about. So we don't want to. We really have to keep that keep that wiggle room in there. And so I do believe that they're deliberately putting that wiggle room in there, and it truly, yeah, even that could happen. I mean, you could get some new government regulation that pops up suddenly that they have to comply to, that they had never heard of before, and they're like, oh, well, this is going to set us behind 6 months. I think,
yeah. I'm just seeing this, I've seen this in the United States, though, as well, and other countries, where they will say, what they'll usually do is, I call it sort of the honing in of a date. So they'll first say coming soon, then it's coming 2025, and then the next step is usually coming, pick a season of 2025. That's what seems odd about this one, to be completely honest. But again, that has happened everywhere, and I don't think there's any malicious intent. But I think, to your point, they're just trying to hedge their bets. Yeah. I also think it's interesting that we've known about Legoland Shanghai for quite some time.
Yeah,
and they have to keep. From a marketing standpoint, I look at my marketing friends, and they're going to always say, well, what can we talk about? We got to be able to make some sort of announcement. And I could just see them sitting around a boardroom table, sitting there and saying, okay, so we're definitely going to open in 25. Yes. Okay. Are we going to open in spring? Well, it's possible. Okay. Are we going to open in summer? Well, summer would make me feel better. Yeah. Okay, but summer's an awful long way away. Why are we talking about summer for next year when we haven't even hit summer of this year? If we can create the illusion that it's only a year off by saying spring, that would be better. Yes, but we may not be ready until summer. So, it sounds like this is marketing double talk, just to keep people interested just enough so that it doesn't go off people's radar. Yeah. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, all valid. I think my point to listeners would just be that, I don't know, just
we'll believe it when we see it.
Yeah, we'll believe it when we see it, but also just, kind of be cautious whenever it comes to kind of like promises that you're getting from, I think, this region. Just do your due diligence, and as much as you can, try and get commitments and deposits and things up front. But just get that stuff up front, because I think we're in the era now of there's a lot of promises, just like back how it used to be with the UAE, right? A lot of promises for a lot of work, and then what ended up, now we see the work coming, but it's definitely not the scale that was promised back then. So I think we're kind of hitting more that road with China right now as well. It's like there's a lot of talk because they want to make it seem like the tourism economy is recovered 100%, but it has not. It has not at all. So anyway, okay.
And may by spring or summer of 2025.
Right? Lord help. Okay. Anyway, that's it. Okay. Liquid gold, Scott. Let's talk about liquid gold.
Let's talk about liquid gold, Philip.
Okay. So this is kind of like, maybe, I don't know what to call it, a trend, I think, that I have been seeing. And so I'm going to put a few pieces together in this to illustrate the trend for you all. But basically, I think the question we're looking at right now is, will drinks be a new big trend at theme parks, and what does that look like? I think is the segment. And the two main pieces I'm putting together here is, one, the new McDonald's chain that launched in Q4, and also looking at some of the redevelopment plan items from the Starbucks, the Starbucks plan. They released also at the end of last year redevelopment plan. So looking at these two things together, and basically what it suggests to me is that overall, we saw consumer spending cut on specific items, but it seems like consumers really didn't cut these like high cost drinks like what Starbucks does. And economists are kind of arguing about the reason, but it basically seems like the reason is because they're kind of just at that threshold where it's like, oh, like $5, $6, it's like where like people still want to treat themselves, but they don't feel as bad because it's not a long-term contract. It's not like a monthly subscription. It's not any of these things. It's like a one thing of $5. And so it seems better. But also, drinks are enormously profitable. I mean, the markup on them is absurd. And so these two things go hand in hand and make the perfect mix for Starbucks, which is why, ostensibly why McDonald's is copying them, although of course McDonald's does not say that. So I'll give the information on these two things now. So now that we have that background in it. So McDonald's announced in last, I think in November, December, that it is piloting a new cafe concept called CosMc, which will mostly sell indulgent, highly customizable caffeinated beverages with some food. The first CosMc location is now open in Illinois, and 9 more are planned in Texas in the coming months. So the note there, like the big thing there, is that they are highly customizable. That is the thing. And that is, I think, what we see with the Starbucks plan as well, because it's something like over $1 billion in revenue that Starbucks collected in the last fiscal year just from drink customizations, as in just from like adding foam to a drink, right? Just the customizable part. So that is the thing that McDonald's is kind of honing in on when they're doing this. And I saw a great commentary from CNN that says, from the food writer that says, you can't just plop a bunch of customizable coffee drinks into the McDonald's menu. Doing that would slow down the kitchens and service times and could confuse customers, which is hence why they just made their own brand, a whole separate brand to test out drink concepts basically, and then potentially bring them in to the mainstream. And you also did see this a little bit last, if you remember the Grimace craze. That's a little bit of the testing of the drinks and how popular they could make drinks. So that's that one point. And then looking at the Starbucks plan. So Starbucks released a quite extensive reinvention strategy. I'm going to link to it in the show notes, but I'll just highlight a few things. They're going to expand to 35,000 locations outside of North America by 2030, which they currently have just over 20,000. So that's that's not quite double, but it's very close to double by 2030. They also are going to double not double, but they're going to significantly increase their pay to the baristas to try and reduce the turnover in those things. And it says that while custom drink orders have always been possible at Starbucks, the arms race of recipes and flavors has been accelerated by social media, where off-menu drinks go viral. Starbucks has accordingly begun to experiment with selling these high-octane drinks itself, and it pays attention to how customers adjust beverages when ordering in cafes and develops recipes based on those preferences. In the outline of their plan, they talk about speeding up the service in the cafes with new coffee-making equipment, so basically to make things faster. It also says its menu has expanded, and cold coffee drinks that often include add-ons now account for 60% of the orders year-round. Rather than going to the counter, more customers are going through drive-up and using the mobile system. And they give some even specific examples about how for the cold drinks, instead of having to scoop the ice and pour the milk and do all this kind of stuff, the systems will just dispense that stuff automatically. It'll cut down from doing frappuccinos from almost 90 seconds to 35 seconds. So a huge cut down window on that. And then they'll have automatic coffee brewing machines that will just grind and brew cups without having the baristas to have to do that themselves. So I read this and I was like, oh my gosh, all of this I feel like can be paralleled directly into the theme park industry. And it reminds me also of the stories we did about the pop-up bars. I think exactly this is the reason why these pop-up bars have been, so successful in theme park and outside of theme parks. Even to the one I talked about last time with Hush doing their winter lodge. Well, now Hush has just gone from the Christmas lodge now into the winter lodge. so now we're not Christmas, but we're winter. So it's this, different. Just take out the Christmas trees and put in more snow and redo the drink menu and add in some mocktails. So that was a lot. Scott, what do you think?
Well, okay, so let's.
Are you buying what I'm selling? This liquid gold.
Let's kind of unpackage this a little bit. No, I think you're right. As we both sit here and drink our coffee,
right,
it's
seriously.
like So it's clear that coffee has become I won't say become, because it's been, Starbucks has been kind of a status thing for coffee for quite some time. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said we like to treat ourselves, but we used to treat ourselves with a banana split or an ice cream sundae or a giant, cinnamon roll larger than our head when we go to a theme park. But that's now, $25.
Mm-hmm.
So you now have to splurge in a way that is affordable. I also think you have to splurge in a way that, because, going back to our previous story about reservations, because you have 15 minutes before you have to be at the queue for the next attraction, you have to have something that you can carry along with you. You have to have something that is portable. So I think there's that. I think and the profitability margin is gigantic, not just for what you put in the cup, but even for the cup itself. The souvenir cups. Disney has done this for years with the popcorn buckets and that sort of thing. So I think that you're absolutely spot on when it comes to this is easily something that can be incorporated into theme park profitability. I'm a little confused by McDonald's and CosMc. Whatever happened to McCafe? Does anybody remember that? Or was that just a regional thing? McCafe was when they started opening up coffee shops in McDonald's.
Yeah. So
it was a separate brand. It was a separate barista.
Yep.
It was a separate check-in, check-out.
Yep.
Was that a test for CosMc?
From what I understand, that was too confusing for people. So
I agree.
Yep.
I agree.
So they're trying to
I
make it its own separate thing. Like it's conceivable that people wouldn't even know that CosMc is a McDonald's brand. It's a whole separate. They're separate buildings. They're separate.
Yeah, it's like Mears Transportation in Florida. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a standalone. Yeah.
It appears to be a standalone. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well that's fair. And since it's not going to be in the stores, that's fine. I think they're going up. If anybody's going to go up against Starbucks, the only food chain I can think of that can do it is McDonald's.
Yeah.
Dunkin' Donuts made a great run. They made a great run at it, and still are competitors. Because I just drink coffee, I don't drink all the added garbage. Yeah. I think it's actually better than Starbucks coffee, but that's just my own opinion. The interesting thing about Starbucks is, we talk about how much, or you mentioned how much they made on just changing the add-ons and the changes. To me, from a profitability standpoint, you don't want to start making that the standard recipe, or at least you don't want to put it on the menu as a standard recipe, so you can't charge extra when people want to change it. I love the idea of going, these things going viral, and if Starbucks could just very easily keep track of the change order, we'll call it the change order recipes, just keep track of them,
they do.
So that the baristas know how to make them quickly. So that the baristas know how to make them very, very quickly, but never add them to the menu, because then you can't do them as a change order, as an upcharge, as a change. I think it's interesting because this is the next new way that everybody can be unique. Yep. They can be their own person. They can go, oh, well, this is what all the cool influencers are drinking now is don't do this, but add this. I always used to say, whenever you go to a restaurant, you can always tell people who work in the restaurant industry, because they're the ones who special order their food. They're the ones who will say, yeah, I don't want ketchup on it. Can I get the honey barbecue sauce? And then eventually that has turned into honey barbecue burgers. It's like market research. So I think that's interesting. I think that the idea of, I think that where this really comes into play into theme parks, whether it is existing brands, which I think it probably should be. I would say that if CosMc wants a jump off, start to get an exclusive licensing agreement with a theme park, because that would be really, really cool. To help build that brand really fast. It is, again, it's a way to be unique. It's a way to indulge ourselves without breaking the bank. And it's something that we all, we're still trained to think, well, I don't want to stop for a meal, but I could grab a cup of coffee that will tide me over till dinner, and then I can eat on the way out.
Yeah.
What I would be very curious to see is it going to impact, if they were to build up a coffee bar, coffee tea bar, hot beverage bar, whatever, if it would impact their culinary sales. I don't know.
Well, so I guess that's exactly it. I think that's kind of what I want to see, actually, is I would like to it just, honestly, I think if you could replace most of the food festival kind of stuff with like drink festival stuff, it would be better. It would be easier for the parks. It would be more profitable. Food is low margin, but beverages are high margin. It would be much better. And I think if you could, what I would like to see is a model, some sort of model where maybe you take out one food stall, but you bring in like a thing where people can, within reason, customize a certain set of thing, or you try and incorporate this more into the parks in that way. And then I think about how to make it faster. Like I just reading all these suggestions from Starbucks, I'm like, that's brilliant, and I think if we could incorporate some of that into the parks, it would help tremendously because, parks are known for the same problem that Starbucks has. High turnover, this is high skill to actually have to customize a drink. So if you have high turnover plus high skill drink, that's not a good combination. But if you could reduce that, then you could make this a very much more profitable.
Yeah, I just think we have to make sure that we're riding that line, because once it becomes too simple and is not truly customized, then it loses its cachet, and nobody wants it. Nobody wants to buy it. Well, hopefully we haven't lost our cachet over the last 30 minutes because we've been sharing with you everything we can possibly think of to talk about in the insider side of the attractions industry. But unfortunately, our time is up for another week. So, on behalf of Philip Hernandez with Gantom Lighting and the Haunted Attraction Network, and myself, Scott Swenson with Scott Swenson Creative Development, this has been Green Tagged Theme Park in 30, and we'll see you next week.